Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's Fantasy Baseball Waiver Wire Show. I'm stumbling over my words. Let's start that over. No, we're not going to do that. Every Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific, I am here. Just me, Dr. Dan Ratner, and Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss. And I want to talk baseball waiver wire. Got my mitts. See, I was reaching for it. I want to talk baseball waiver wire with you, cowboy. God, I'm excited. All-Star break. It's officially over. Baseball starting up today. It's going to be fantastic. I'm excited. And, I want to talk about Juan Soto offered over $400 million to play baseball. He said no. He said no. He wants more with Scott Boras, actually. That's his agent. I know Scott very well. But the whole thing is this. He doesn't want to play in D.C. That's the reason. He doesn't want to play there. He wants to play in a different organization. For some reason, he does not like the Nationals at all. He wants to leave, and he's talking about New York. He's talking about San Francisco. He didn't really talk about LA at all, but he wants to play in a big market team, and I can't blame him. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. He can make that money with probably, 15 teams probably would be willing to pay him that money, and the ones that wouldn't are just because they can't afford him. Anybody would try to get Juan Soto. So I think, I think he should play where he wants to play. I do think that sometimes people take these big contracts. Look at Freddie Freeman. There's some speculation that he's unhappy that he left the Braves because he was so happy there and he took the big contract. So sometimes I think it pays to stay in a place you like. But Juan Soto doesn't even like playing there, and they're also not winning. So I understand it.
You know what? This kid grew up dirt poor. He used like a milk carton as a mitt. I love when guys like him get all this money because, he shares it with all his friends and he builds schools. I'm sure he builds baseball academies in the Dominican and all that. It's just nice when these guys that come from nothing score a huge contract. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see them rise up like that. So kudos to you, Juan Soto. So let's get to the waiver wire. We got a lot to talk about today. We're talking about 60% and under in rostership on Yahoo. That's usually the stat that we use, the baseline. Ross, who would be some of your top four? You can list all four if you want. We don't have Kasey here, so we've got more room to talk.
Thank God. Kasey, Scheinfeld Center. He's on vacation. Don't feel bad. Oh, where's Kasey? He's enjoying a huge vacation, caviar, champagne, everything, all the extras.
Ross, tell him the truth. He's on vacation with his kids at Universal Studios. My God.
And it was Disneyland a couple days ago. Yeah, horrible. So I'm going to mention players that I like, just not for this week, but also for the rest of the year. These guys you should pick up immediately. Drop whatever you're doing and pick them up. First guy I like a lot, they just brought him up last week, is Estrella Ruiz of the San Diego Padres. He plays second base, plays outfield. His minor league stats this year, these are like softball stats. 333, 13 home runs, 66, am I reading right? 66 stolen bases in the minor leagues this season alone. So they just brought this kid up, Ruiz of the Padres. I love this kid. Pick him up. If you're in Dynasty, I'm sure he's already taken. I'm sorry, but there you go. But if you're in a keeper league or if you're in a redraft league, 43% I think right now in Yahoo. Pick him up now. My next guy has the best name I've ever heard in my life, Ross Sperling of the Toronto Blue Jays. Ever since they made him a starter, his ERA has been 2.00. He's been pitching gems for Toronto, and he's been looking great as a starter. Solid. He's their fourth starter, which means he goes against fourth starters usually. So the competition for him is a lot less compared to being like a one or two guy. So I love Ross. I love the name. So pick him up immediately. Another guy I like is Leone Taveras of the Texas Rangers. Leone is an outfielder. Last week he hit like 438. He steals bases also. He's a speed demon. Plays in Texas in the summer. Easy place to hit. I love him a lot. Pick him up now. And then our cover boy this week is Brandon Belt. Brandon Belt, the past 2 weeks, is hitting over 400. We'll talk about it a little later. But long story short, he heats up during the summer. And he was hurt a lot during the year. And he's under 50% right now. So if you need a first baseman, or I think he's an outfielder too, great pickup. So those are my top four. But these guys you pick up for the rest of the year, you don't drop these guys.
All right, great recommendations. I was on Brandon Belt earlier in the year. He's only 30% roster. Meanwhile, pronunciation alert, Leody Taveras.
Thank you.
And also, you were talking about Ross Stripling, so I just want to make sure we get that as well. Yeah. So, we stay on top of your pronunciation.
Who are your top 4 pickups?
All right, here are my top 4. First of all, Dylan Carlson. Still available in a lot of leagues, and he does everything. And he's also playing really well right now. So he'd be a guy that I would scoop up. And I agree with you. I'm always looking for the guys that I can pick up and keep for the rest of the year. Dylan Carlson is one of those guys. Another guy that I would scoop up, we've certainly talked about him before, but Nico Horner, he doesn't belong on the wire. You should pick him up and hold him for the rest of the year. Most of the guys that I would hold for the rest of the year, though, are probably going to be hitters in large measure, because pitchers can go through streaky times and closers are a complete mess. We'll get to them a little bit later. So I'm going to name 4 hitters for my guys that I would pick up. Nick Senzel. As a Reds fan, Nick Senzel, I'm sure you're pretty excited about him. He's batting like .350 over the last 2 weeks. And he's really coming around and he can do it all. He's also an exciting player because he can do a lot of different things. Another guy that I would pick up and hold on to, I mentioned him in our previews leading up to this, is Ramon Laureano. I know he hasn't been hitting well in the last maybe 3 games. People overreact to these all the time. They're like, he's over 12, get rid of him. Meanwhile, you're wearing an A's shirt again. Why do you wear A's shirts so much? Is that like your softball team?
It's funny. When I go to spring training, I know the equipment manager for the A's. He actually just retired. And they always invite me. They treat me like I'm the king of England, and they give me so much stuff like shirts, hats, everything. And so I just feel obligated. I kind of promote a small market team. I think it's nice.
All right. Now, there hasn't been a king of England in a long time, so I don't know how they're treating you, but it sounds like it.
Well, the king of England, when there was a king, they treated me great.
Yep. All right. Let's get to the positions, Ross. So we're going to go through the positions. We're also going to do a little bit of talk about this time of year, because the trade deadline's coming up. There's people you need to know to have as like the backup closers of teams are going to be very useful in the next week or two as players shift teams. So let's get to catchers. You give me your first maybe 1 or 2, and then I'll go.
So Cal Raleigh of Seattle, he's just been consistent. I mean, if you want consistency and a guy that can hit, the past 2 weeks, 267, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, he's not going to wow you with the stats every week, but he's not going to hurt you at all. Very solid. He's playing almost every day. Cal Raleigh, good pickup if you need a catcher. Also, another guy I like right now, he's killing the ball. It's Carson Kelly of Arizona. I mean, this guy, 393, 2 home runs the past 2 weeks. He's a streaker, though. I don't trust him to hit 393. But if you need a catcher that's not hitting right now and you need somebody to pick it up, Carson Kelly is your guy. Another guy that I think you should pick up just for the rest of the year. And he's been playing almost every day. He plays in San Francisco, and the ball flies out of there in the summers, Joey Bart. Joey Bart, the past 2 weeks, 259. I know it's kind of low. You're saying, why do you want to pick? This guy's just consistency. He starts almost every game. He plays a lot. He's going to play. He's going to be their everyday catcher. So pick up Bart if you need an everyday guy. I give you 3 good catchers. I know you don't have a consistent catcher on your team. About only half the teams do in your league. So pick one of these guys up immediately.
These are great names, but you make the key point. There's not a lot of reliable catchers out there. So pick one that's hitting hot right now. One guy that I like is Yandy Diaz. He plays in Colorado, so that's an added bonus. Are these guys the greatest? No, they're not. None of them are going to be. I also think Sean Murphy, decent pickup right now.
Murph.
He's a guy that you could, we just call him Murph here on the show. You could pick these guys up, play them while they're playing well. If they're not playing well, look for the next guy, But I would say Carson Kelly is a major priority for me. Among those different ones, I think Carson Kelly stands the best chance of sticking in that lineup, in your lineup, and being a long-term season answer. Okay, let's go to first base, Ross. Who you got?
So Carlos Santana, he used to be a Kansas City Royal, traded to Seattle. Ever since he's been traded, he's been hitting a lot better, a lot more confident. He's been hitting the ball really well. 4 home runs the past 2 weeks. I think this guy's going to heat up in the summer. Seattle's the hottest team in baseball, 13 wins in a row. I don't have to tell you about that. They're playing unbelievable right now. Hottest team. You can't get a hotter team than Seattle. Carlos Santana, I like him a lot. And then we mentioned Brandon Belt. Let me just tell you Brandon Belt's stats the past 2 weeks. 478 the past 2 weeks. 3 home runs. That's what he's hitting, 478. So he's hotter than a pistol. So if you need a first baseman, or I think he's outfielder too. If you need a guy that's going to hit for average and also get a few home runs for you, Brandon Belt's your guy. We talked about it. And then another guy for sentimental reasons, it's his last year, guys. Albert Pujols, for sure, Hall of Famer. He's hitting 292 the past 2 weeks. Nothing wrong with that. So I feel any of these 3 guys can help your team, but I kind of like the Albert Pujols just because this is his last year. Let's give the guy some respect.
I like it. Now, listen, I'm also going to say that I think a guy like Brandon Belt would definitely be a priority pickup because he's a guy that you can hold for the rest of the year. And one of the reasons I love Brandon Belt, I talk about this kind of thing all the time, is his split stats. If you look at his split stats, he crushes righties. That's what you want to be looking for in the split stats. There's plenty of guys they've got really solid stats, and then when you look under the hood, they crush lefties. Lefties don't play that often. Find a guy who crushes righties. So that's a great way to look at it that can get you some good value. How about Yandy Diaz? What's the latest with him, Ross? I mean, he was tearing the cover off the ball, but right now he's a little dinged up. My intel is that, and my intel is simply I read the news, is that he's just got a left forearm contusion. Now, he's a little by that. That's just a bruise.
I mean, this is, I'll be, you brought it up. I mean, Diaz, he's hitting great for average. His power numbers are nothing to talk about. I mean, he doesn't really steal bases that much. I mean, if you need average and you're in one of these leagues where it's a category league, great. But good player, not a great fantasy player. And we should have a segment where there's some really good players, but fantasy-wise, they're not so great.
Yeah, we should do an overrated, underrated segment.
Because
we'll do it again.
There's some great players out there, but fantasy-wise, they're very below average.
I'd much rather go with Jose Miranda or Vinny Pasquantino because they've got the upside.
Exactly. So at Diaz, my story with him is if you need batting average, great. If you don't pick him up.
But meanwhile, Carlos Santana, also famous guitarist at the same time. I don't know how he does it all. He's
unbelievable.
He's an old guitarist, plays Black Magic Woman, and he's also a baseball player who has been, I think, on 25 different teams. It feels that way to me anyway. All right, let's move to second base, Ross. Who you got?
So we talked about Ruiz of San Diego Padres, up and coming stud. If you just pick him up, don't even think about it. Just pick him up. Drop your worst player, pick him up immediately. Another guy, this guy plays like every position in the infield, is Ramon Ureas. Ramon plays for Baltimore. The past 2 weeks, 387, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs. He's been hitting really well, and he plays, I think, second base and third base. I feel he's like everywhere in the infield. So, long story short, those are my 2 second baseman pickups. Hopefully you have a good second baseman. But and then you mentioned Nick already.
Nico Horner.
And Horner, who plays shortstop. But those are the only 2 I have for this week.
Okay, one guy I want to just bring back to the radar. He's been off the radar for a while, but Jorge Mateo is back on the radar. And I think some of it's because Baltimore's playing so well that a player like Jorge Mateo, maybe some of his dip was that, they were losing steam as a team. Now they're all exciting, and he steals bases. You can't find that in many places on the wire. So second base, shortstop, and outfield eligibility. Is he somebody who's going to last on your team for the rest of the year? He might not, but he also might. He's a guy that I would give a good look. We talked about Gavin Lux last week. He's at 58% rostership, so, last call on that in all likelihood. But he does some of everything, but one of the nicest things, and this is interesting, he still isn't stealing bases. And that's part of where his value is supposed to come. If he starts stealing bases, he's going to be must-own for the rest of the year. But I do agree with you about Estrella Ruiz. 66 stolen bases? Is that a serious stat?
That's a serious stat in the minor leagues. He stole this year alone. I mean, this guy's the real deal. I mean, I know it's just double-A. So you're saying, it's just double-A. It doesn't matter. I don't care what level you're playing. If you steal 66 bases in half of a season, I mean, you're going to break Lou Brock's record, like 120, whatever it was. I mean, it's
well, not only that, but stealing bases is probably one of the more translatable stats, more translatable skills to the majors. Sure, the catchers are going to be better. They're going to throw you out more often. The pitchers are going to have better pickoff moves and be more well-established in that sort of thing. And you could make lots of mistakes. But if they're giving them the green light, that's a very translatable skill.
Yeah, and add 13 home runs to that too. So what does that tell you?
That tells me to pick him up now. I don't understand why his rostership is as low as it is, but
there's 40, different types it's not that low. Hold on, it's 40-something%. So that shows you
and it's rising fast.
Yeah, but you're just saying the 40% that picked him up are the guys that know what they're doing. I mean, these guys, he's only been in the league for less than a week, so it will be 80% by the end of August or 90%, whatever you want to say.
Yep. All right, Ross, I'm going to go first on third base because I've been deferring to you. That's okay. I got a couple of guys I want to mention. One, this guy's been around for a while now. It feels like he's been around forever, but he was a very hot prospect just a couple of years ago. But Mankata is looking really good right now. I mean,
why does he look so good? What has he done the past 2 weeks?
The past 2 weeks, he is batting .300. He's got 2 homers and 6 RBIs. By the way, remember, the past 2 weeks have the All-Star break built in.
I know.
So these numbers, they're deflated a little bit. But he's hitting .300. He's got a .364 on-base percentage, a .500 slugging percentage. I mean, he's looking really good.
And he plays for a great offensive team. Remind me who that is.
The Chicago White Sox, who Ross and I both predicted would win the World Series. It looks like they may win 70 games. We'll see. So Mankata, though, this is a guy that I would pick up. He could be somebody who could stick on your team for the rest of the year easily. Another guy that I like that I'm not as sure about, but I'm excited about because I'm a Guardians fan, is Nolan Jones. The guy has shown great power in the minors. I know people question his plate discipline. Sure. But sometimes these guys figure it out. Remember what happened with Austin Riley? He came up, everybody said, he has a hole in his swing. He's never going to be that good. And so people weren't that high on him. He figured it out. These guys are professionals. They're trying to figure this out, and a lot of times they do. Nolan Jones, you could do a lot worse than scooping him up. Okay, who do you got at third?
I mean, you mentioned, I liked a lot. Alec Baum of the Philadelphia Phillies. Past 2 weeks, 444, 2 home runs. Seriously? I mean, if you need a streaker, Alec's your guy. I suggest you pick him up at third base and see if he streaks for another week. And then Donovan Solano of the Cincinnati Reds. I think the Reds are going to trade probably
everyone,
and I think Solano's going to be there. I think Brandon Drury's going to be on. I mean, they're going to trade away everybody. I mean, the Reds it's going to be a fire sale. I mean, the team's losing money. The owner's the poorest owner in the league. So, he's looking to save a buck. But long story short, Solano, past 2 weeks, he's hitting .364. This guy, young stud. I like him a lot. If they give him playing time to play every day, he can be really, really good. But those are my pickups. But again, I'm not crazy about third base this week.
Okay, but I don't want the fans out there thinking we only look at the 2 weeks. I know that's something that both you and I tend to look at the 2 weeks as our.
Well, I'm talking about streakers, and I do.
No, I know. I mean, this is part of how we evaluate it. But I'm just saying, if you look at Alec Baum's numbers from the last 30 days, they look pretty good there too. Very, very solid.
Tell me what they are. You got them in front of you?
I got them in front of me. He's batting .357 for the month. He's got 2 homers and 10 RBIs. A .378 on base percentage, so he's obviously not walking much if he's batting .357, but a .529 slugging percentage. He's hitting the ball very well, and he was a top prospect not long ago. Reminds me a lot of Mankata in terms of what we're seeing and their career trajectory. Alec Baum just a year behind Mankata in his development, although Mankata was also injured for a lot of the time. So let's move to shortstop, Ross. I will defer to you this time.
Jorge Mateo, you mentioned him. I don't have to talk to him again. I think he's a good pickup if you need somebody at shortstop. My other shortstop, he plays in Colorado. Easy place to hit during the summer. Ball flies out of there. They score a lot of runs. Jose Iglesias. Jose is hitting .394 the past 2 weeks. And I think he has like 6 stolen bases. I mean, he's been doing pretty. No, I read that wrong. He doesn't have 6 stolen bases. But long story short, he's really hitting really well with average. And he'll get a few home runs here or there. But Jose Iglesias is my number 1 pickup for shortstop this week.
Okay, we've covered a lot of territory because Nico Horner, Gavin Lux, Jorge Mateo, these guys all qualify at shortstop also. So there's a lot of overlap, but a couple guys to mention. I'm not sure how to feel about Josh Rojas, but he's hitting the ball well, and he qualifies at second base, third base, shortstop, and outfield. So he could be incredibly useful. He's a guy that I would expect probably wouldn't stick on your team, but while he's hitting well, definitely pick him up. Good injury fill-in. Another guy that I like is Taylor Walls. So we all know that Wander Franco's gone down for a long time. He's going to be out for a while. Wasn't even hitting that well, actually, when he was up. And I know, Ross, you've been down on him much of the season. But Taylor Walls has a good opportunity, and he's hitting decently well right now. So, again, probably not somebody who's going to end up sticking on your team, but if you need a fill-in, that's, not Nico Horner, not Gavin Lux, not Jorge Mateo, the guys that we think are probably going to stick longer. I'm not as sure about Jorge Mateo, but I'm certainly certain about Nico Horner and Gavin Lux should not be cut again. But Taylor Walls is a good fill-in. So that covers shortstop for me. Let's move to outfield. Then we'll get to pitchers, and then we'll talk trade deadline. Ross.
So you talked about him before. He's one of your top four. Ramon Laureano.
Laureano, yep.
59 games, 8 home runs, 9 stolen bases this season. It'd be a 20-20 guy if he played the whole season with those stats. He started off really bad. I mean, I had him as a pickup like as soon as they activated him. He was hurt for like a month and a half.
I drafted him when he was suspended because I was waiting for him to come back.
I mean, he's already suspended. I mean, this guy, he's back. I feel he's the best outfielder in Oakland, if that means anything. But long story short, I feel he can be like a 25 guy this year if he does get hurt, which means, I feel he'll have 25 home runs and 25 stolen bases. So I think he's a good pickup. I mentioned my top 5, Leody
Taveras?
Yeah. How do you say his name?
Leody
Taveras. 438, 10 RBIs, 4 stolen bases the past 2 weeks, as I mentioned before. He runs, he steals, he hits home runs. He does everything in Texas. They like him a lot. The Ranger organization, they have high hopes on him. They might trade some of their other players. We'll get into that later. But long story short, I like him a lot. And then you mentioned Josh Rojas. He plays the outfield, 292 the past 2 weeks in Arizona with 3 stolen bases. He can run. He had 3 home runs in one game this year, too. So he has some power. But again, those are my pickups for this week in the outfield position.
All right, I'll mention 3 more just to give people some variety. I did already mention Dylan Carlson, but I'm going to bring him up again because he has no business being 46% rostered. He had a great year all last year, and he's putting up the same kind of numbers. Scoop him up now, and St. Louis also knows what they're doing. Grab him now. Top priority. I agree with you on Ramon Laureano. Of course, I mentioned him before.
Yep.
Alex Kirilloff, another guy that I would scoop up. He's got first base eligibility in outfield. In the last month, he's got 18 RBIs. He's batting .310. He looks really good. There's going to be some ups and downs because he's a young player, but I would scoop him up. And another guy to pick up, and this is in keeper leagues, he should be owned, across the board, Riley Green. But even in redraft leagues, this is a guy who could turn it on fast. So if you got a bench spot and you're just looking to try somebody out, Riley Green would be a guy that I would definitely try out. All right, let's move to pitchers. Ross, I'll defer to you again.
So Johnny Cueto, ex-Red, ex-Giant, now he plays for the White Sox. The past 2 weeks, he's batting. He's 2-0 with his starts the past 2 weeks. ERA .64. Cueto got hurt. I don't know if anybody remembers, but he was on the DL for many weeks, over months.
I mean, that's been true for years now.
I mean, he's back. I mean, this guy is throwing hard, shutting out teams. He looks unbelievable. If he needs a strong starter, I mean, I would say he can easily, like, if he picks it up, he could win 20 games if he keeps pitching like he's pitching. I mentioned Ross. Stripling over.
I'm going to help you with the pronunciation in advance.
With Toronto, he's, as I mentioned, he's been looking great. And then David Peterson of the Mets, he's past 2 weeks, 10 innings, 18 strikeouts, ERA of like 1.39. The Mets have a really good team. They can hit, and Peterson can pitch. He's like might be their third starter, I would say, in the rotation. but he's pitching really well, and he's under 50%. So if you need a really good starter, I think you should pick him up.
All right, these are good pickups. And Ross, I want to tell you, while you were talking, and partly because you were talking, I took a little more of a look at Johnny Cueto, and I thought I should own this guy. So I scooped him up. I made him during the show.
He did it during the show.
It happens sometimes. It happens. So a couple other guys to mention. I still like Drew Rasmussen a lot. You know,
is he still under 60%?
He's 56%. He's just creeping along
so
there.
Good. I mean, I agree with you. I just can't believe he's like under 60%.
It's kind of shocking to me. I mean, he's a very, very solid pitcher. He shouldn't be that low in the rankings. Another guy that I like, and this is atypical of me because I like strikeouts, of course, but Spencer Watkins to me looks like he's starting to put some things together, and he's playing on the Orioles. I want a piece of that. It's exciting. So I would definitely hop on that. Garrett Whitlock, 50% rostered, huge talent. We haven't seen that much of him. His role keeps changing, but and he was injured as well. But I think he's worth picking up. If you look at it, these are winning teams. It's funny that I actually chose 3 guys in the AL East because I usually try to avoid the guys in the AL East because there's a lot of hitting there. But sometimes you just got to go where the numbers look good. Would I take Johnny Cueto over all of those guys? Probably, yes. The only thing is there's the injury risk, but he's definitely certainly worth owning and probably somebody that you can keep for the rest of the year as long as he doesn't get hurt. Last guy I'll mention is George Kirby. He is, he's a young phenom. When these guys figure it out, they can really turn a corner. So similar to Riley Green, if you got the back end of your roster and you're looking for somebody to have at the back end who can make a difference, I think George Kirby is a great pickup. What do you think, Ross?
I like Kirby a lot. He just has to put it all together. I mean, he has some really good starts and really some bad starts. The thing about these young pitchers, like, for example, Hunter Green, he'll strike a lot of people out, but he'll put the ball right over the plate and challenge these hitters, and they'll hit it right out of the park. So a lot of these young guys have to get playing time. It sounds, of course they do. They just got to get used to pitching the major leagues. I mean, it's very hard for a rookie to come in and be lights out. I mean, that happens once in a life, like once every 10 years, you'll see a rookie come in first year and be like the phenom, like they should be. Yeah. So again, a lot of these young pitchers that are being brought up, you'll see it in July and August and September. Don't be so high on them. If you're in these leagues where you get X amount of innings, you can only start so many innings. Don't really start rookies that much. Be very selective.
But if you're a really serious fantasy baseball player, you should be paying attention in those months because for next year, you're going to see which one of those guys is starting to turn it around in August and September. You got to pay attention to that.
Oh, yeah, big time. I agree. I mean, I love watching the young kids I don't know because some of these guys, I remember when they were drafted. I want to see how they develop, so it's kind of fun.
Okay, now relief pitcher is especially tricky around this time of year. Let's get into talking about the trade deadline, Ross, because we know a lot of these relievers are going to get traded, and it doesn't always work out the way that you think. So it's not always the closer gets traded and the backup guy goes. Sometimes they both get traded and then a new person is next up in line. Or sometimes the backup guy is the guy who gets traded and the closer stays. It's hard to track. Ross, how do we navigate this?
It's really hard to track. I mean, you got like the Marlins have Flora. I mean, I don't know who's going to stay in Florida. I have no idea. It's hard to track. I mean, my lead pitchers to pick up this week is Kyle Finnegan. Dave Martinez, the coach of the Nationals, actually said he's the closer for the rest of the year. He's 16% owned. Finnegan, ex-Red actually, and ex-Royal too. He's drafted by the Royals. He's pitching really well. Very strong pitcher. The problem is he pitches for the Nationals, who won't have many save opportunities. Brett Martin of Texas. I don't see him leaving all, but I don't know if he'll keep that job. I mean, he has 3 saves and a 0 ERA the past 2 weeks. But Barlow is their closer. He's hurt. He should be back next week. It'd be interesting if Barlow gets traded because now, think about it. Barlow's hurt, comes back, has a bunch of saves. Teams need save guys. Martin proved he can close, so why even keep Barlow, right? I mean, trade him.
Yeah, well, listen, I think teams are going to showcase the guys they want to trade. I mean, Lou Trevino is a great example. He's saving games right now, but he's probably going to be saving games for about 9 more days.
And then Tanner Scott, a guy that pitches for the Marlins. another reliever, another closer, 12 saves this year. Listen to this stat, 37 innings pitched, 55 strikeouts. So this guy is just not like a save guy. He comes in middle relief. This guy does everything, but now he's been closing recently. So Tanner Scott could be a guy on the move also. Again, I feel some of these teams that are in contention, like the Yankees and Mets and people like that, they're going to beef up their bullpen. I mean, nobody has a great bullpen except if I had to pick one team that has a good bullpen, who do you think that will be?
Let me give that some thought.
I'll tell you,
the Braves? Now, you don't like Kenley Jansen that much, though.
Yeah, but I think the Braves are good. I like Milwaukee, even though Hader's been getting beat up a little bit the past couple save opportunities. I still think with Williams and the Boxberger. Mm-hmm. They have some really good relievers in Milwaukee, but again, they can improve too. I mean, they easily. So you can see Seattle picking up a reliever. There's going to be a lot. The relievers are going to be the big get during the trade season before it ends in the end of July. So that all being said, we'll see. It's an open market. I mean, you'll see guys leave teams very quickly. It's going to happen very quickly in 3 days.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, I think in many ways, the number one trade acquisition that happens during these trade deadlines is people beef up their bullpens because they know in the playoffs, the deeper your bullpen is, the more you can mix it up, not let your starter go through that third rotation if they're not, not on that day.
The number one starter that's available, the Reds already said they're going to trade him. And the two teams right now that are in the front is the Yankees and Minnesota, is Luis Castillo. Great arm, been pitching great this year. Unfortunately, he won't be a Red in August. I mean, I see him being a Yankee. What do you think?
To me, it's almost a foregone conclusion. I've seen this so many times with the Yankees. Yes, that is probably where I would guess he would go. But, some of the frontline starters are going to move around to the contenders. But the bullpen guys, that's the thing to watch, especially in fantasy. Because if Luis Castillo goes from the Reds to the Yankees, maybe he gets some more wins. Maybe his ERA gets elevated a little bit. But it's not going to change much.
No. Remember, was it 2 years ago when the Astros picked up like 3 closers? Like they picked up like 3 closers and still had Pressey, but they picked up 3 guys and they were all guys that had saves, like they're closers on 3 different teams.
I think Hector Neris was one of them. So
it was one. And I think that's going to happen again with one of the teams that's in contention. Obviously, it will happen again. But a lot of these closing guys won't be on these bad teams anymore. They'll be gone.
Okay, so now listen. We know it's hard to predict, but I'm going to go ahead and name 5 names that I think are good to add at this time in this week before the trade deadline hits.
When's the deadline? Tell me when the deadline is. It's July 31st?
It's right before August 1st.
Like midnight. I remember like midnight at this time.
I actually think it's now 4 p.m. They changed it somehow. I think it was because the people in Major League Baseball were having to work until midnight. They were like,
I think you're right. Yeah.
So
let's hear your 5. I'll give my opinion. Go.
Okay. I think that AJ Puck very worth rostering because Lou Trevino almost certainly going to be on the move. Now, does Danny Jimenez, is he the guy to own? I think he gets moved too, actually.
When is he? He's hurt. I mean, hasn't pitched in weeks.
He's hurt, but I think he's coming back soon, which means they could move him. And
so Danny's going to be the closer. I don't see him being moved, but I think Puke is going to. Is it Puke or Puck? How do you say it?
I sure hope it's Puck. If his last name is Puke,
I always want to say Plunk because of Eric Plunk of the Mariners.
Plunk and the glasses. I love it.
Yeah, but I think that I think you're right. Trevino's ERA is like over 6. It's not that good.
Yeah, but he's much better in the last 6 weeks.
Okay,
don't pay attention. His ERA was so bad early on.
How bad was it?
It was so bad. I don't actually have something queued up. All right,
I set you up.
You did, and I don't know.
Okay, I like that. I like that. I don't know if he'll close, but I think he'll be an arm that's going to be golden in one of these teams. Yes.
Okay, but actually, I think there's a couple guys that are even more the clear owns, like Joe Mantiply. This guy is the backup on the Arizona team. I think Melanson is going to get moved. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. But who am I asking? I'm asking Ross.
I know, but it is Joe Mantiply. He pitched for Atlanta, I think, last year. But or San Francisco. But long story short, I think you're right. I think he'll be on the move. Arizona's going to clear some.
Oh yes,
salary
right,
space.
Right.
And,
yep. Josh Stallman in Kansas City. It's not totally clear that he'd be the guy, but I think Scott Barlow is probably on the move as well. Yerry De Los Santos. I think David Bednar's certainly going to be on the move. But again, you could get surprised. Yerry De Los Santos could get dealt himself. Anybody who's pitching well in the middle relief can get moved. Another guy that's interesting for other reasons is Jose Alvarado. Have you seen what this guy's doing? I mean,
every year he's good.
He's probably going to just stick in middle relief, but he is striking out 19.29 batters per 9 innings recently. He basically strikes out like 2 batters every 3 he faces. And that can be incredibly valuable whether closing or not. So those are my relievers. Ross, anybody you'd add before we move into
I think St. Louis is going to pick up a closer. They're not happy with Gallegos at all. It's been a really bad year for him, actually. And they've been trying experiments with other guys, but they'll bring in a legitimate closer. And again, you can just look at all the bad teams. I don't think the thing I can tell you one thing is there won't be one Cincinnati Red close. And that's a relief pitcher that's going to be traded. No one wants any of these guys. The Cubs could be trading Wick maybe away. I mean, his arm is really good, really strong. Again, the Angels could be trading some of their young guns away. It's interesting what happens during the trade deadline. You'll see a lot of guys, we call them rentals. We'll talk about it next week's actually. Rentals of guys whose contract ends at the end of the year, and there's no reason to keep him on your lineup or in your team because you're not in contention. They're making huge money, and why keep them? You can just trade them away and get some draft picks. So, long story short, you'll see a lot of these, even big names. They'll be rentals for some of these really good teams, and it makes it pretty exciting. And they changed the rule actually recently, where you get these teams that trade away their stars. They lose draft picks and stuff because they do it to save money. So there you go.
Right, they had to do something about it. Okay. We're going to transition next week. It'll be just before the trade deadline, so we'll have more coming in about how the trade deadline changes things. But Ross, you wanted to get in some picks for your Cy Young.
These aren't picks. These are my MVPs for midseason.
All right, MVP and Cy Young.
MVP and Cy Young. So I did do Rookie of the Year. I'm waiting. I'll do that in September. So my MVP for the American League is Aaron Judge. Let me tell you why. He's hitting 284. 33 home runs and 70 RBIs. He plays for a first place team, and people are, if you go to Vegas and make a bet on who the MVP is, you know who the odds on favorite is? Guess.
The odds on favorite for AL MVP?
Yep, right now in Vegas.
I would think it's Aaron Judge, but
it's Ohtani.
Oh,
and Ohtani plays on a team that's 20 games out of first place.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
He doesn't have the home runs or the batting average like Mr. Judge or RBIs, but he does pitch. That's the reason why he's the Babe Ruth of, Babe Ruth was a pitcher. We all know that. So yes, I get it. But if you bet $100 on Judge doing the MVP, you get 170 back. So I suggest you take the mortgage out of your house again, like I told you last year, and bet it all on Judge being the MVP.
Is he going to break Roger Maris's record? I know there's
now
it's
like
and stuff, but
Barry Bonds' now, but
right, but that's
61.
the
I think he will. Unless he gets hurt, God forbid, because some idiot has him on his on the fantasy team. That's me. But I think he'll hit over 61. Yeah, I think he'll do it for sure. Stanton can maybe do it too. He's been killing the ball, and I have him too. In the National League, Paul Goldschmidt, who, beginning of the year, if you bet Paul Goldschmidt to win the MVP, it was like 30-1. So whoever
it probably was higher than that.
It was 30. I looked at 30-1 at Caesars.
It was 31.
30-1. He's hitting 320. He has 20 home runs. And
he's actually hitting 330.
330. Excuse me, I read it wrong. 330, 20 home runs, 70 RBIs. This is as much as Judge. He's been on fire. I mean, Goldschmidt, everybody thought he's getting older, his career's almost done, blah, blah. It's not. This guy's for real, and he's hitting really good for average. And if St. Louis keeps winning and they make the playoffs, he can write his name as the MVP. And Machado's right behind him, but I still like my man Paul Goldschmidt. Cy Young, National League, Justin Verlander. You can't argue this. He's 12-3, first pitcher to 12, ERA under 2, made a comeback. He's married to a model. I mean, this guy's the real deal. Everybody thought his career was over with. I mean, I know people were saying, I'm not drafting Justin Verlander. He's an old man. Well, you were wrong. So who do you think is you mentioned a name before, and I like him too, but tell me who you like for the American League Cy Young.
Well, I don't think he's currently the Cy Young winner, but I think he's getting close. And if he keeps this up, he could end up being it. And that's Dylan Cease. So I know the White Sox haven't been winning a ton of games, but he's still won 9 games already. And he is really starting to dominate.
I mean,
he's looking like the best pitcher in baseball.
Talk about dominate. Just if you guys are bored, just look up his strikeouts. He leads the league in strikeouts. Unbelievable. I mean, it's just like he strikes out 10 to 12 people a game. I mean, that's his average. He's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, in the time Verlander struck out 27 over the last month, Dylan Cease struck out 53, and they both have an ERA under 1.
Yeah, I mean, again, but the White Sox are not in first place, and Houston is. So there you go. That's my theory.
All right. Listen, I can't argue with it. I certainly understand where you're coming from. I mean, the other guy to mention in the AL Cy Young is Shane McClanahan.
Tell me why. He started for the American League in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, Shane McClanahan, he's got 10 wins himself. He's got 147 strikeouts in 110 innings. His ERA is 171 on the year.
Yeah. No, he's gold. You just don't hear about him. He's not a big market guy.
He's just a guy who could really sneak in there and win it. National League, who do you have there?
I have Tony Gonsolin. I'm not a Dodger fan. Don't say, he's doing it because he lives in L.A. I'm not a Dodger fan, so don't say that. Tony Gonsolin, 11-0. That's all I got to say. 11-0, ERA 2.02. He's been just dealing the whole year. I mean, if the guy is 11-0 and hasn't lost a game, and he plays for a first-place team, you can just give him the Cy Young now.
Listen, I hear you, but if Corbin Burns wins a couple more games, he's going to get the Cy Young, and should actually, I think. But Tony Gonsolin is
he's 11-0. What are you talking about? He's 11-0. Hasn't lost a game. Yeah. He had one bad start. It was right before the All-Star break, and it was a no decision, and it was a horrible start. It was his worst start of the year. And I call him Joe Dirt just because the guy, he looks like a guy you would see at a monster truck rally or something. Because, his hair is always long. It looks like he hasn't shaved in a few weeks. And I don't think he takes baths that often. But Tony, 11-0. That's all I got to tell you. You're living in a dream world, not thinking he's going to not win the Cy Young.
Well, another guy who could end up winning the Cy Young is Carlos Rodon. He's going to have a big second half.
He's pitching today. He's pitching today against the Dodgers. It should be good.
That's right. Okay. Thanks for these picks, Ross. Very exciting. I agree with
you.
They're
just my mid-season awards.
Mid-season awards. Okay. Well, they won the award.
Next week, I want to talk about players that are going to be moved out of their current location because of the trade deadline.
All right. We're going to do it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Put your comments below. We love talking fantasy sports with you. We will see you same time next week, Thursday, 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific.